Ukraine's Magura missile Navy drones have destroyed 2 Russian helicopters and damaged another one in the Black Sea. The operation marked the first case of Russian Mi-8 helicopters being hit by Ukrainian drones in the Black Sea. As a result of the successful operation by the Main Intelligence Directorate of the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense in the Black Sea, 2 Russian Mi-8 helicopters were destroyed near the Russian-annexed Crimea Peninsula on December 31st, 2024, with the use of Magura V5 naval drones equipped with missiles. The attack was carried out by fighters of the Special Unit Group 13. Rockets P-73 SeeDragon successfully destroyed the Russian Mi-8 helicopter. Moreover, the strikes forced the rest of the Russian fleet to retreat from the Ukrainian coast. Being in operation since 2023 and capable of covering a distance of more than 800 kilometers, Magura drones have helped Ukraine push back against Russia's Black Sea fleet by striking dozens of ships last year. Ukraine previously destroyed several notable Russian ships with Magura drones, including a landing ship, Caesar Kunikov, a Sergei Kotov patrol ship, high-speed Cerner and Akula landing crafts, and a Tarantul-class Ivanovets missile corvette. The Russian-Ukrainian war was one of the few conflicts where American Abrams faced off against Soviet tanks. Moreover, only the Ukrainian armed forces had the opportunity to compare the real combat characteristics of these vehicles firsthand, writes Business Insider. Soviet and American tanks, although they were created to counter each other, were made based on completely different concepts. Soviet T-series tanks, including the most common of them, the T-72, are smaller and lighter than the Abrams and have weaker armor. At the same time, their more compact dimensions make them a somewhat more difficult target. Soviet tanks also have an automatic gun loader, which has an ambiguous reputation. Once upon a time, the Abrams already fought against simple export versions of the T-72 in Iraq. In Ukraine, on the contrary, simple export versions of the Abrams are fighting against the most equipped Russian tanks. And yet, Ukrainian tank crews highly appreciate their Abrams. It is better than the T-72, T-62 and even the Russian T-90, the Ukrainian tank commander told the publication. Like other tanks and armored vehicles in Ukraine, the Abrams faces challenges from the constant threat of drones, mines and anti-tank missiles, forcing it into an unusual role, but the tank is still valuable. Along with Bradley infantry fighting vehicles, it has bolstered the combat capability of Ukraine's 47th Mechanized Brigade. It is a far superior system. The A1 may be old in the sense that it's been in our inventory for a long time, but it's far superior to anything the Russians have, said military expert Robert Greenway, who handled Abrams during his army service. Soviet-style tanks are smaller targets, harder to hit and easier to hide. This smaller size means less demand for materials, allowing Russia to produce more of them. The US took a different approach. We never set out to make as many tanks as the Russians. We just set out to make one that could take out a few Russian tanks and survive the process, Greenway explained. The Soviet Union wanted more for less with greater mobility, while the US, concerned with the need to counter the onslaught of Soviet armor, focused more on firepower and survivability. The design of the Soviet tanks, smaller, lighter and lower to the ground, make them somewhat harder to hit in certain conditions and more mobile, but the tanks lack the thick armor that protects the Abrams crews. A telling point, the Abrams ammunition is stored behind the turret, separated from the crew by a protective door to improve crew survivability. Soviet-style tanks store ammunition directly in the turret, which can be disastrous if the ammunition catches fire when it hits the vehicle. One of the Abrams' advantages is its depleted uranium shells, which have increased penetration and are more likely to cause a fire in an enemy tank after penetrating its armor. The Russians have such shells too, but they are not used often. A powerful gas turbine engine can propel the 60-ton A1 to 72 kilometers per hour, giving the tank sufficient maneuverability. However, the Abrams is difficult to maintain.
Russian servicemen transport the Western equipment captured in the battles in Ukraine to the territory of Russia. The relevant images were distributed on Russian Telegram channels. The Russian army has captured some of the Western equipment used by the Ukrainian army. Various armored combat vehicles damaged in the battles, including armored vehicles, were packed into trucks and taken to the territory of Russia. A driver wrought carnage on New Orleans' famed French Quarter early on New Year's Day, ramming a pickup truck into a crowd and killing 10 people before being shot to death by police, authorities said. More than 30 people were injured in the attack, which the FBI is investigating as an act of terrorism. The driver was killed in a firefight with police following the attack around 3:15 a.m. Wednesday along Bourbon Street near Canal Street in an area teeming with New Year's revelers, the FBI said. President Joe Biden said his reaction to the New Orleans attack was one of anger and frustration, adding he would refrain from further comment until more is known while the investigation continues. He spoke to reporters in Delaware as he prepared to travel to the presidential retreat at Camp David. At a news conference, New Orleans Mayor LaToya Cantrell described the killings as a terrorist attack, and the city's police chief said the act was clearly intentional. New Orleans Police Superintendent Ann Kirkpatrick said the driver was hell-bent on creating the carnage and the damage that he did. The area is known as a prime New Year's Eve destination. Tens of thousands of college football fans were in the city for Wednesday night's Sugar Bowl playoff game between Georgia and Notre Dame at the nearby Superdome. The stadium was on lockdown Wednesday morning, but the game was expected to be played as scheduled.
Any more information you can offer?
You've all got my statement. I'll have more to say in the next hour or so following what's going on in New Orleans. I'll be happy to do that.
Do you understand if the person crossed the border?
I'm not going to comment on any specific yet of all. I've contacted every agency in the federal government as well as the state. They're all coordinating to get to the bare facts. We know what the facts are.
Can you say if you're a foreigner or if you was a domestic?
I'm not going to say anything until I get all the facts in front of me.
Has the suspect been identified? Has the suspect been identified?
Again, I'm not going to comment until I speak to the group later. I've spoken to every member of the agency, from the CIA to our national security team, to our FBI, NSC, and we're gathering all the, and I spent a lot of time with the government, with the mayor.
What was your reaction when you heard what happened?
Well, the reaction was one of anger and frustration. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you guys.